everybody, welcome to CS5 Unmasked, bringing you another costume tutorial. Today we're going to be making the Jason outfit from Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. And we're going to be doing this for around $25. Now I'm fully aware that $25 really isn't a whole lot of money to be making a movie accurate costume with, but I'm going to try my very best. So sit back and relax and welcome to CS5's Cost Cut Costume Tutorials. Alright, let's go and see what we're going to need. We're going to need a mask and a hood, a green work shirt, green work pants, a chain for the neck, some sort of undergarment to simulate rotted flesh, and some material that we can use to make bones, and a pair of work boots. Alright, let's go and start off with the shirt. Now typically I stop at a thrift store to pick up most of my items, but I was actually pretty fortunate that Walmart was having a clearance sale on most of the work shirts, so I was able to pick this one up for $4. Now as far as the pants, I was able to pick these ones up at a yard sale for just around $1. Alright, now for boots. Now footwear is going to be optional, just wear whatever you feel is comfortable. I had a pair of these raggedy old boots sitting around the house, and as you can plainly see, they have seen better days, so I might as well use them for this costume. So I referenced tons of photos, and even watched the movie several times, just so that I had a good understanding where all the damage needed to be placed. Now even though there is some inconsistencies with photos that I've seen online, and even in the movie, I went ahead and marked out where all the damage needed to be. And I just repeated the same process for the pants. Just using a pair of scissors, I proceeded to cut out on the lines. Now once I was all done adding all the damage to the clothing, I grabbed a piece of sandpaper and went over each cut mark. Now this is going to rough up the edges and really make the clothing look quite old and tattered. Now it's time for the undergarments. Now this is just some old thermal underwear and shirt that I've had for about 15 years, so I really didn't have any use for it, so I decided to use it for the costume. So using the shirt and pants as a template, I'm going to mark out on the undergarments where the simulated rotted flesh needs to be. Now as far as the shirt is concerned, it's pretty much going to be all over the place because that's going to be the most part exposed. But for the pants, it's just going to be a few key locations. So before we add the simulated rotted flesh, there is going to be a few things that you may need to do to prepare for that. I am going to be using silicone, so there is some precautions that you'll need to take. Now fortunately I do have a mannequin that I'm going to be using when I'm applying the silicone to the shirt, which will in turn prevent the silicone from sticking to the back of the shirt, but chances are you yourself are not going to be using a mannequin. So just some old pool noodles and even some cardboard will actually work out just fine, just as long as there's some sort of protective barrier preventing the silicone to sticking to other parts of the material that you don't want it to. Now one thing that I absolutely do love is free stuff. So on Facebook's marketplace, there's always somebody giving away something. So I was actually pretty fortunate when I came across this. I found a bunch of used silicone and even a caulking gun that somebody was giving away for free. But I knew well enough that this wasn't going to be enough for what I wanted to do. So I did have to end up purchasing another bottle of brown silicone. And I did pick this up on clearance for around $5. Now glove protection is quite important, and I would strongly recommend getting a pair of latex or even nitrile gloves. Now all I'm going to do is put a little bit of silicone in my hand, and then I'm actually going to mix some brown acrylic paint. And then I'm just going to apply it to the affected areas. In this case, it's going to be all over the shirt. Now I will use this sparingly because I have a large area that I need to cover, and I really don't have a whole lot of silicone. Now this process will take quite a bit of time, so be very patient, because once you're done with the shirt, you're going to have to hit those key locations on the lower undergarment. Now moving on to the hood. Now I'm going to start off by just using a regular balaclava that I picked up at AlliedExpress.com. Now I did buy this for just under $1, and I had to wait about 2 months before I actually got it. Now that's one of the drawbacks about ordering anything online that you're going to get from overseas. But the prices are cheap, so I am willing to wait that long. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by just using a Sharpie and just mark out certain reference points where the damage is going to be. Now using a dummy mannequin head saves a whole lot of time, and you do get a better result. But a lot of people don't actually have access to this, so using a balloon or even a milk jug will actually work just as well. Just use whatever you have on hand. Now again, I'm just going to repeat the same method I used for the shirt and the lower undergarments. I'm going to put some silicone on my hand, add some brown acrylic paint, and just apply it. I'm not going to be too careful when I'm applying this, I just don't want to get into the areas where I've already marked. So I did allow this to dry overnight, which is highly recommended. Now the color is a little bit light, but I'm not too concerned about that because I will be darkening it up in just a little bit. But I do want to add a little bit of blood effects to most of the damaged areas. And for that, I'm just going to be using some red acrylic paint. Now I'm just going to use an old piece of rag just to apply the paint to the hood. Now I did have to do this quite a few times because the balaclava absorbed the paint pretty well. So in total I had to do 4 applications. Now again, this might look a little bit funny and too light in color, but I will be darkening it up very shortly. Now I am going to leave this part above the left eye exposed because that's going to simulate part of the skull. Now I'm going to go ahead and darken up the hood. Now I'm just going to be using some cheap black spray paint that I picked up at Lowe's for about $1, and I'm going to go over the entire hood. Again, I'm not going to be too careful because I do want this a bit more darker. Alright, now that I've allowed it to dry for about an hour, I'm just going to use a damp cloth and wipe off any excess black paint. Now all of the black spray paint on the surface will actually come off, and all of the paint that's in the grooves and creases is going to remain. Now this is going to give us the look that we really want. Now this did turn out pretty good, but I know if I took another crack at it, I can probably improve it quite a bit. But for right now, it's going to work for what we want to do. Now we're going to go ahead and age and dingy up the shirt and the pants. Now this is actually relatively easy. I'm just going to use a bucket with about 1 gallon of warm water, and I'm going to add some black acrylic paint. I'm going to mix this up and then put the shirt and the pants in the mix. I'm going to work the clothing in the black water solution for about 5 minutes, ensuring that every part of the clothing has been saturated with the liquid. Then I'm going to leave it in the water for a couple of hours. Once that's done, I'm going to slowly remove the items from the water, wring them out, and then hang them up to dry overnight. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and make the bones for the costume. Now this is actually extremely simple. I'm just going to be using some standard crafting foam that I picked up at Joann's Fabric for just a couple of dollars. I'm going to make some brief measurements based on my chest size, and then just sketch out a simple pattern of what a rib cage would actually look like. Now I'm going to do this exact same process for not only the front, but also the back, the legs, and the arms. Once I have everything sketched out, and I'm happy with the way it looks, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. Now I don't want the bones to look just plain white, so I'm just going to make a little concoction of some of the colors that I already have and add a little bit of water. I'm just going to go ahead and apply it to the foam to give it more of a distressed, aged, and really dingy look. Now it is going to be difficult to apply this directly to the costume, so I'm just going to try using some standard tape. Now this may or may not work because it's not going to stick to silicone very well. It was working for a little bit. I ended up having to use these small little fasteners to actually adhere it to the costume, and I did pick these up for just under $1. Now once I got all the bones in place, I'm going to go ahead and use some brown silicone and just kind of stick it to the costume. Now for some situations, it may still have a little bit of difficulty actually sticking, so I will use fasteners for the parts that actually come up. So for whatever area that I'm going to be using these fasteners on, I'm just going to go over it with some silicone again. Now as far as the fasteners being on the inside of the clothing, I'm just going to use some duct tape that I had laying around the house. I'll just place it on the inside so that it doesn't cause irritation while I'm wearing the shirt. Now switching back over to the hood, I'm going to go ahead and paint on some teeth. I'm just going to be using regular white paint at this point. And then using the same concoction which I used to stain up the bones, I'm going to use here for the teeth. And don't worry if you add a little too much, a damp paper towel will clean up most of the mess. Alright, let's go ahead and make the mask. Now this is just a cheap mask that I picked up at AlliedExpress.com for just over $1. I went ahead and removed the strap and set it aside. We will be reusing it later. I went ahead and marked out the mask, adding all the damage, and I'm going to actually be resizing it. I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller than what this mask currently is. Now normally I'd be using my Dremel tool to cut it out, but this time I'm just going to use a pair of scissors. And even though it's a little more difficult, and you do got to take your time, it still is totally possible. Now that we got it all cut out, I'm going to go ahead and proceed to sand the mask. Alright, we're going to go ahead and paint the mask now. Now I'm just going to be using some cheap white spray paint that I picked up at Lowe's. Alright, using a pencil, I'm just going to mark out all of the scratches and extra damage that has been done to the mask. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use a nail and just go along my pencil marks. Therefore the scratches are a bit more permanent. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start aging the mask. I'm just going to start off by using some diluted black. I'm going to rub it all over the mask, allow it to set for a few seconds, and then I'm going to proceed to wipe it off. Now I'm going to continue to repeat this process as many times as necessary until I reach the desired look. Now before I continue stressing and aging the mask, I'm going to go ahead and put a chevron on. Now typically I'd normally just buy one from JDF Studios or make one out of red masking tape. Today I'm actually just going to paint it on. Using a pencil, I'm going to mark out where the chevron's going to go. And I'm just going to make the chevron using red acrylic paint. Now being as I resized the mask to where it's a little bit smaller, I have to put new holes in for the strap. And then using the nail from earlier, I'm going to proceed to make the holes, with some firm pressure, pushing and twisting. Now we can get back to weathering the mask. Again using some diluted black paint, I'm going to go around the edges and hitting key points of the mask. Now I'm going to repeat this process using some diluted yellow acrylic paint. Now I'm going to play around with the coloring just a little bit, going back and forth with the diluted black and the diluted yellow until I can get the mask looking just right. Okay, let's go ahead and put on the strap. Now this is the strap that came with the mask and I will reuse it. And I'm going to attach it to the mask using the fasteners from earlier. I'm going to go ahead and proceed to cut off the button ends of the strap. Then using the fasteners, I'm just going to attach it to the mask. Now once all of the fasteners have been installed, I'm just going to put some regular Scotch tape over the ends. This will prevent the fastener itself from catching onto the hood or accidentally coming in contact with my skin. You know, one of the good things about using acrylic paint, if you really don't like the way the mask is looking, just use some warm water and you can wipe most of it away. So you do get several chances to get the mask looking the way you want it. Okay, now for the hands. Now this actually was a whole lot easier than I actually intended, because I did come across a pair of skeleton gloves on eBay just under $2. And in all honesty, it's actually a cheaper route to go this way than trying to have to make them myself. Now using the same color concoction that I've been using to stain the bones, I'm going to use for the skeletal gloves as well. I'm just going to go ahead and put it on, let it dry, and then reapply it until it matches the other bones. So for the final thing that we're going to be needing is a chain. Now this is just a plastic chain that I picked up at the dollar store, and it's going to work perfectly for the costume. Alright, and that is it. Let's go ahead and tally up the cost and see what we come up with. And as you can plainly see, it's just about $25. Okay, let's go ahead and put everything together and see what it looks like.